9 years of marriage go down the drain when he catches his wife red-handed in a beauty salon. Well, where do I begin? This story is a real doozy. Let me tell you me, Jimmy 33, and my wife Kayla 32. We live in a little town called Brownsville, Texas, and we've been hitched for about 9 years now. And I gotta say, things were going pretty dang well until recently. You see, about 13 years ago, I was visiting Kayla at her folks' place, and her bestie, let's call her Tiffany, got all up in my face, asking me why I hadn't put a ring on Kayla's finger yet. While Tiffany was grilling me, Kayla just stood there not saying a peep, so I got the message loud and clear since I was head over heels for Kayla. I was pretty happy they felt that way, so I started making moves to tie the knot with her. 2 years later, we got hitched, and now we got two little rugrats running around. Getting married was the happiest day of my life, and I always planned on being a stand-up husband and dad. Kayla wanted a big old wedding, and we had a whole bunch of folks show up. We even got some of our cousins from Mexico to come on down. Me and Kayla, we ain't rich, but we always made sure our kids had what they needed, and they were good as gold. Kayla, she's always been a real peach. She's whip smart, a real hoot and a half, and she's got a sense of humor that'll make you bust a gut, which is pretty rare for a looker like her. She's a great mama. And our girls, who are 9 and 6 now, they just adore her and look up to her like nobody's business. Our oldest, she's even starting to act just like her mama. This is something I'd always tell Kayla, and man, oh man, was she a knockout. I loved her big, bright smile, her hazel eyes, and don't even get me started on that booty of hers. She was the kind of gal who had to wiggle and shimmy to get into her jeans, and whether she was all dolled up in a little black dress or just rocking some yoga pants, that thing was just poppin'. She always knew she looked good, and it made my mama think she was a bit full of herself, and maybe she was right. But I never paid it no mind. I worked down at the local auto shop, and Kayla, she runs her own little hair salon, which didn't surprise me one bit because she's always been a real fashionista, which we didn't always see eye to eye on. Kayla was always on top of the latest trends and had to have all the newest gadgets, whether it was the latest iPhone, some designer heels, or brand-name threads. She just had to have them. It made me roll my eyes a bit, but hey, it was her dough, so I couldn't say much until she became a mama and had to rein it in a bit. Instead of living that glam life, she started focusing more on our girls. Now she's cool with last year's iPhone, and she traded in her Gucci for some Disney princess gear for the girls. The only time she breaks out the fancy duds is for holidays or when we go on vacation, even though that's how it is now. I had to cut back on my splurging too, but it don't matter, 'cause our kiddos come first. No matter what, everything seemed A-okay. But now I'm starting to see some trouble brewing after me, and Kayla ran into her old pal's ex-me, and the fam were at the Piggly Wiggly. Picking up some grub, our oldest reminded Kayla about her Pop-Tarts, and Kayla told me to go with her to grab her favorite kind after she finally picked a new flavor. We came back out the aisle to see Kayla yucking it up with some fella when our daughter interrupted him with the Pop-Tarts. Kayla introduced me to the guy. Turns out this dude was the ex-boyfriend of her old friend. Let's call her Jasmine. At first I couldn't place who Jasmine was, but then I remembered she used to work with Jasmine at some dead-end job before Kayla started her own biz. This guy, we'll call him Dwayne, seemed real glad to see us and was real friendly, so I didn't think much of it at first. Dwayne. And Kayla caught up with him a bit more, and it was just plain weird seeing her grinning at him like that and acting all giddy about seeing him again after waiting around for a bit. I gave her the signal that it was time to get dinner going, and Dwayne just laughed, saying it was good seeing us. On the way home, Kayla told me how shocked she was to run into him at the store. She said she was even more surprised that Jasmine and Dwayne had called it quits. I asked her when was the last time she'd even talked to Jasmine, and she said about 4 years ago. Hearing that, I figured they must have lost touch at first. I thought that'd be the last I'd hear about Dwayne. But as time went on, I noticed that him and Kayla were still chit-chatting. They'd yap on the phone and on her Facebook. He'd mention me every now and then. So I didn't think much of it, 'cause I felt like I was in the loop. They started gabbing more and more, and the conversations got longer, even going on past bedtime. But I really started getting suspicious when Super Bowl Sunday rolled around on game day. Kayla was on the horn with Dwayne when I asked her something. After she finally answered me a little while later, she came over and said Dwayne wanted to talk to me. Caught off guard, I took the phone and asked him what was up. He asked if I was going to watch the Super Bowl, and I told him that was the plan. When he asked who I was rooting for, I joked the Lions, laughing. He said he was too, and asked if I wanted to watch the game with him. I told him that'd be great, but we were going to have a bunch of rugrats over, and I doubted he'd want to deal with that cracking up. He said never mind, and I handed the phone back to Kayla. I figured that was that, but a couple hours later Kayla came back and said Dwayne wanted to talk to me again. He said if I could slip away, there was a Super Bowl shindig one of his buddies was throwing, and I could come watch it with him. Kayla told me she'd call her brother and have him pick up the kids early, and we could head over a little late. So I said why not after her brother came and got the kids. Me and Kayla got all gussied up and made it there around halftime while shooting the breeze with everybody. I found out the party was being thrown, 'cause somebody was a hardcore Cincinnati Bengals fan. The dude who threw the party had a bet going on who'd win, and he wanted the Bengals to lose. Well, he sure got his wish 'cause the Bengals got whooped by the Rams, and it shut that loudmouth right up after having a good laugh at the guy's expense. We all just kicked back and enjoyed the get-together. But this is when I started getting a funny feeling about how Kayla was acting with Dwayne. I didn't like how she was all up in his grill, and I felt like a third wheel in their little chats. I figured maybe I just wasn't being social enough, so I tried to get more into the conversations. At one point, I asked him about why him and Jasmine split up. Dwayne said him and Jasmine were just keeping it casual back then. They weren't really serious. Kayla laughed and said she was surprised, 'cause Jasmine was really into him after a bit. I said I had to go grab another beer and stepped out onto the porch where the cooler was after shooting the breeze with some folks on the porch. I headed back inside to look for Kayla, and I saw him talking in a corner. I was about to mosey on over, but something about the way they were talking just felt off. He was way too close to her and was giving off this real predatory vibe. I froze and stayed out of sight to see what was going down. He grabbed Kayla's hand and she giggled all coy like after that, she sashayed into the kitchen and he followed right behind her. Staring at her caboose, all I could think was, what the hell? But then I snuck a little closer to get a good look in the kitchen, standing by the sink. Kayla was yapping with some gal and had her back turned to Dwayne while Kayla was talking. The gal looked at Dwayne, and I could see he was checking Kayla out. I think she told Kayla, and Kayla looked back and grinned at him. Turning back to the gal, she kept on gabbing, knowing full well that Dwayne was staring at her booty. Usually I love the way Kayla dresses, but now I was feeling real paranoid Kayla would chat with the gal, then glance back and smile at Dwayne as he kept sneaking peeks at Kayla's backside in her yoga pants, and Kayla wouldn't budge. She'd just look at him like she was saying, I know you want to get with this, even though they'd try to play it cool. They'd go right back to eyeballing each other, and you'd catch on if you were paying attention. All I could think was, I really hope I'm not seeing what I think I'm seeing. After the gal said something to Kayla, she followed her back into the living room and ended up spotting me. She asked what the dudes on the porch were jawing about, and I told her not much, and that I was ready to hit the road. She said she wanted to stay longer, but I reminded her that her brother was still watching our kids, waiting on us so he could bail after we said bye to Dwayne and everybody. We headed home. Especially since we both had work in the morning. On the ride back, I had to tell her what I saw in the car. I told her it looked like Dwayne was trying to make a move on her, and she acted like I was off my rocker. She laughed it off and said I was seeing things. I dropped it, but I wanted to start keeping a closer eye on him after what I saw. He was definitely checking out her moneymaker. The more I paid attention, the fishier she started acting. She was always glued to her phone. She was always bringing up Dwayne to me and to her bestie Tiffany. Then she started being all hush-hush with her phone, gabbing away till the crack of dawn. One night I asked if she was still talking to Dwayne. She just glared at me and said she was. After that she hung up the phone about 5 minutes later. After a while I got sick of her talking so late and asked her to chat with him during the day. And her excuse was she talks to Tiffany then. And when I told her it wasn't right to be talking to Dwayne so late at night, she'd laugh and say I was being paranoid. Everything I'd try to say she'd brush off and say I was worried over nothing. All my questions did make her stop mentioning Dwayne, though I guess she figured it'd get me to quit being so worked up. But it didn't. 2 days ago made me think the worst. On Kayla's day off, she said she was going over to Tiffany's place to do her mama's nails. Since I knew about this a couple days back, I wasn't really suspicious. Later that night, my youngest asked if we could have pizza, but I told her that her mama was making dinner. She threw a fit about it, and since I was craving pizza too, I decided to call Kayla and tell her she didn't need to cook anything. When I called Kayla, it went straight to voicemail. I tried again, and same thing. I had to wonder why the hell her phone was off. 'Cause this never happened before. I let half an hour go by and her phone still went to voicemail. After that, I decided to call Tiffany. When I called Tiffany, she actually picked up. I asked if Kayla was there and she said she'd left. I said I thought she was going to do Tiffany a solid and do her mama's nails for her. But she said Kayla got a phone call and just took off. I asked Tiffany who called and she said she didn't know. But she was pissed that Kayla told Tiffany to have her mama swing by her nail salon tomorrow. This threw me for a loop, 'cause Tiffany was like a real sister to Kayla, and hearing that this went down was just messed up. After hanging up with her, I called around and nobody had called Kayla, so to me this only left Dwayne. I got so pissed I couldn't believe this was happening at the shindig. Dwayne told us where he lived, but I didn't know the exact address, just the street if Kayla was there. I knew he was getting busy with her grabbing my keys. I was just about to head out the door when I remembered the kids were still in their room playing. I grabbed my phone to call my mama to see if she could watch him for a bit, but she didn't pick up. My best bud, let's call him Tyrone, was my last shot. So I rang him up when he answered. I asked what he was up to and he said his girl was fixing dinner. I told him I was about to ask for a favor, and he asked what it was. I said, never mind, it was too much to ask, but he pressed me again. So I told him, I think Kayla's stepping out on me. After I said this to Tyrone, he went real quiet. Like it was the last thing he expected to hear. He asked if I was for real, and I told him everything. He said he couldn't come watch the kids, but I could drop him off at his place. This ticked me off, 'cause he lived clear on the other side of town. After getting the kids ready to go, it took about 15 minutes to get there. After pulling up at Tyrone's, he asked if I knew where Dwayne lived. I told him the street, and he looked at me like I'd lost it. The street Dwayne lived on was a long avenue, and he asked if I was really going to drive all the way down the road to find him. And I said yup. When I was about to take off, he stopped me and told me to take his ride. He said if I'm wrong and they spot my car, Kayla could call me a crazy, jealous husband. And at least they won't recognize his whip right away after tossing me his keys. He told me not to do anything nuts in his car. He asked if I wanted him to roll with me, and I said nah, it's already jacked up that he's involved. He took the kids, and I headed out to try and find Kayla. Hopefully I wasn't too late, and I could catch her red-handed, but I was praying I was dead wrong about this. But my gut was telling me otherwise. After a long drive, I made it to the street Dwayne lives on. Slowing down, I tried to spot Kayla's silver Kia. It was a shady neighborhood, but at this point I couldn't give a damn. All the shady stuff Kayla was doing led me to this. I was really hoping I wouldn't find her car here. But sure enough, I did. Not only did I see her ride, but I saw her and Dwayne too. She was wearing a pink sweatsuit, and Dwayne had on nothing but a wife-beater, some shorts and some flip-flops. She looked like she was getting ready to split, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I mean, the dude was practically half naked, and I hated how he was all up in her space again. Driving by, I flipped out in the car. I kept saying, hey, her, I know, hey, her. I couldn't think of any other reason except he was screwing my wife, and I bet like magic her phone works now. Not only did I catch her all cozied up with this punk, now I had to try and beat her home when I got back. I was shocked that me and the kids made it home with time to spare after putting the kids to bed. I decided to wait up for Kayla to come in. Almost 55 minutes later, she walked in the door acting all annoyed to be back. She looked over at me, walked right past me and went in the bedroom. Her not saying a peep really blew my mind. I marched in our room and asked why her phone was turned off, and she told me she never turned it off. She said her phone died and she had to charge it. I asked where she'd been and she said she already told me she was. At the start of this year, when Kayla ran into her friend Jasmine's old flame at the Piggly Wiggly, when Kayla introduced me to this dude, Dwayne, I didn't think much of it at first. It seemed like she'd just bumped into an old buddy or whatever. But she seemed a little too giddy about seeing him again. After that, they kept in touch, and it was starting to be too much. She started throwing up all kinds of red flags, and it was looking real shady. They'd gab on the phone for hours. They'd like each other's pics on Instagram, and this guy started calling late at night. When I told her all this didn't seem right, she said I was being paranoid when she'd talk to him. She'd laugh and giggle, and she'd try to teach him some Spanish words since we're Mexican. What really got me was at the party Dwayne had invited us to at the shindig. I caught him checking out Kayla, especially her booty. She had the kind of backside where she'd walk by and you'd wait a few seconds, then turn and stare at it. Eventually, she caught on that he was doing this. Or even if she did, she didn't do or say a dang thing about it when I told her he was ogling her. She brushed that off, too. It got to the point where I had to try and track her down last week because she wasn't where she said she'd be. She was supposed to go over to Tiffany's place to do Tiffany's mama's nails, but bailed on her after Dwayne called. Since Kayla's phone went straight to voicemail, I figured she must be with Dwayne, and I had to call my best bud Tyrone, and he let me borrow his ride to find her cruising down Dwayne Street. I spotted him, and it ticked me off that he was practically half naked. He had on just a wife beater, some shorts, and it looked like flip-flops driving back to Tyrone's place. He asked what I saw, so I told him, and even he said he thinks Dwayne was getting busy with her. I said I think so too. Especially since he was half naked. If I was dressed like that and somebody came over, Kayla would tell me to put some dang clothes on. He looked like he just rolled out of bed or something. Tyrone asked what I was gonna do, but I really didn't know right then. After that, I thanked Tyrone for watching the kids, and believe it or not, made it home almost 50 minutes before Kayla did. When she got back, she looked guilty as sin when I asked where she'd been. She was real vague and wouldn't give me a straight answer. Eventually, I just had to let it go, especially since I didn't catch him in the act like I wanted to. Folks here said it was gonna get worse, and it sure did. Now she looks at me like I'm a warden and doesn't really want to talk to me. She only gabs with her friends on her phone and doesn't pay the kids much mind and acts like they're a pain. She just parks herself in our little dining area and texts. I didn't even know what to say to her. What really sucked was, thanks to my work schedule, I couldn't really stop her from fooling around. Kayla knew my daily routine, and I'm sure Dwayne did too. Between my job taking care of the kids and helping my mama out, they must have been hooking up while I was gone. I know this because while I was out, I'd try to call her and she'd never pick up. Kayla's schedule was easier than mine, especially since she's her own boss with her hair salon. Whenever I got home, Kayla wouldn't be there, especially if she didn't have to get the kids from school. And when she got back, she'd be real sketchy about where she was. This really messed with my head and gave me what I think is anxiety. I'd be at my mama's, and I'd be thinking about Kayla riding some dude, and this was ever since she left Dwayne's place that night. If it wasn't for this community, I would have been a whole lot worse off. If this blindsided me, I don't know where my head would have been at, but after y'all told me to simmer down and start watching them to get the truth, I had to suck it up and be a man. After doing just that, I was able to get to the bottom of it and found out today that, yep, Dwayne was screwing my wife. And my plan worked out just right. That weekend after work, I got a voice-activated recorder and put it in her car. At first I tested it out when I took the kids to Mickey D's, and it worked pretty good. After that, I stuck it in Kayla's car. Since he might have did her in the car, it should pick that up. It should even pick up any chats or sketchy convos they might be having doing this. I did feel like a crazy person and couldn't believe this was my life. The best advice I think I got was to act like I wasn't worried about Dwayne. It was a lie, but I guess I gotta get used to it, not bringing him up and acting like everything was all good. Got her to relax a little. It was hard, but I just focused on getting to the truth. When I told Tyrone about this, even he said I was a genius. A few days back, I snuck out and grabbed the recorder out of her car and listened to what was on it. I heard a few things, but I definitely heard her talking with Dwayne in her car. The one thing that stood out was when they were driving somewhere, the music was on, but I could sort of make out what they were saying. He was definitely sweet-talking Kayla and calling her Foxy. Kayla was giggling, and I couldn't quite hear what she said, but she wasn't shutting him down. I heard him tell her to pull over, and things got quiet for a minute. Then it sounded like a bunch of dudes hopped in the car, and they took off. It got harder to hear him, with everybody running their mouths. Conversations, it sounded like she was chauffeuring him around to different spots through all their jabbering. I heard him say he was trying to swing by for a bit. I couldn't hear the whole chat, but I definitely heard Kayla tell Dwayne she has to take off early, so come on over. That was pretty much all the good stuff I got from the recorder in her car. They just shot the breeze and laughed, and one dude called Dwayne thirsty. After that, I tried to figure out who Kayla was talking about when she said somebody was leaving early. I thought it might be Tiffany, but even though Tiffany was like a sister to her, it didn't seem like she told Tiffany about Dwayne. She definitely wasn't talking about her mama, so it had to be the gal who works at the salon with Kayla. It didn't totally add up to me because there was a teenage girl learning to do nails there, but it was the best lead I had. Nobody else made sense. I rang up my buddy Tyrone to see if we could trade cars for the day, and he said sure. After I told him what I heard, he was floored, Called her a pricey skank and said he hoped I'd bust her this time, already knowing my routine. She knew to head out after me, and my mama's next-door neighbors helped her with her yard. Since I couldn't bail on my mama, I said I'd only stay for a little bit because I was beat from work. My mama got on my case for cutting out early, but then her neighbor said he could take care of it around 10. I pulled up to Kayla's shop when it was closing up. It's in a strip mall, so you could park out of sight with the other cars there, especially since it was Tyrone's ride. I cruised inside. Dwayne was definitely there, and I was pissed to know I had it right. Nobody was left inside except Kayla, Dwayne, and let's call her Shanice. Kayla was dressed to the nines, and Dwayne was all over her. I saw Dwayne had his arms wrapped around Kayla from behind while they were talking. After about 20 minutes, they really started getting frisky, and Dwayne was smooching on Kayla's neck and grabbing her backside after he had her pinned against the wall. It was clear they were making out, and Shanice just stood there watching him. After about 7 minutes, Shanice must have said something about heading out, and they smiled and shooed her off. Taking Dwayne's hand, they strolled to the back where it looked like they were going down to the basement. I've been down in the basement before when she first opened up the salon, so I knew that's the only thing back there. She'd been looking for a bigger spot for her shop, so she could have an office, since the place she's got now ain't really high-end enough for her, if Kayla knows anything. She knows how to sell something. I was so mad I can't even front. I really can't believe this woman would pull this on me. I did so much for her, and she'd go and do me like this. And Dwayne was a real snake in the grass. He never gave me good vibes, and now I see why. After I grabbed my recorder, I headed over to the salon. Shanice had just finished getting her stuff. So I waited for her to step out before I made my move. When I called out to her, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. I told her not to lock up, and that I know everything. She claimed she didn't know what I was talking about, and I said I watched the whole thing go down. I called her a lying fat heifer, and we got into it. She said don't blame her, that my wife was screwing another man, and I called her messy and told her to get out of my way. She said I wasn't going to be able to catch him humping, 'cause the door was locked. I asked her why they'd lock the door if Shanice knew they were getting busy already, and she said they didn't want nobody. Busting in, I pulled out my phone and called Kayla. Apparently, Shanice decided to trail me in while I'd made my way to the back. Kayla didn't pick up my call, so I threw her for a loop by pounding on the basement door since it really was locked. I didn't know what was going down there, but I knew if she didn't come up, we were through. After banging on the door 3 times, telling them to get up here, they still didn't come up from the basement, turning back to Shanice. I asked her how long she'd known about this. Shanice swore she'd known about Dwayne for about a month, and that Kayla started messing around with him recently. She said he'd come by on Kayla's break, and after a bit, they'd gone down to the basement. She said the next day they'd gab about what went down. I asked if she knew that was Jasmine's old boyfriend, and she said Kayla told her I said to Shanice we got kids. And she said that ain't her problem. I said that's cool, and that I'll be using what she said in court when Shanice asked what I was talking about. I showed her the recorder and told her she could take off now. Getting back in the car, I headed back to Tyrone's, who was a huge help, with not just the car, but watching the kids too. I told him what I saw, and him and his girl were there for me after that. While me and Tyrone were talking, Tiffany called my phone. This was the last thing I needed, but I should have seen it coming. I decided to answer, and she said Kayla told her everything, and that Kayla wanted to talk to me tomorrow. I told her to put Kayla on the phone now, but Tiffany said Kayla won't let me talk to her right now, and she knew I was going to go off on her. I said I wanted to talk to Kayla, but Tiffany wouldn't hand her the phone. Tiffany said if I came by, she'd call the cops and to wait till tomorrow. She said she was going to make Kayla call me, and they both wanted me to settle down. I said, yeah, whatever, and just hung up after getting back home with the kids. I got real emotional. Not only that, but my nerves started acting up again. I still can't believe this is happening to me, even after I did everything right by us. Somehow I messed up. I thought after being hitched this long, I was sure I wouldn't have to worry about this going down. The worst part is this wasn't just a one-time thing. He was screwing her on the regular now. My whole world's gonna have to change for whatever reason. I can't wait to hear what she's got to say tomorrow. I'll keep y'all posted when I hear what she has to say. Ball's in her court. And if I don't like what I hear, I'm filing for divorce. My head is spinning, and I'm thinking it might have been a bad idea to leave Tyrone's place. I feel alone. but I had to post here since everybody wanted to know exactly what Kayla was up to. My wife might have cheated with her friend's ex-boyfriend last update, hey y'all. I really want to thank everybody for having my back these past couple weeks. Everybody seemed real worried about me talking to Kayla after I busted her cheating and figured I was going to take her back right away after what she put me through. I can't even front. I did want to know what Kayla could possibly say to make this right. I was in a bad way and kinda still am. Ever since me and Kayla ran into Dwayne, who I can now call her side piece at the Piggly Wiggly, things went to hell. Ever since, it's hard to get past that. Especially since I had to practically chase this woman all over town, now that I got multiple confessions on my recorder. There's nothing nobody can tell me about what's been going on since the start of this year thanks to this community I was. Last update was thinking about him while being with me, and she agreed. She said Dwayne didn't want to be a secret no more, and she didn't either. She said she hoped we could be civil for our girl's sake, and I said I could never be civil with her again. I said she wasn't getting custody, and she said she hoped it didn't come to that. I told her to go back to Dwayne's crib and be with him, since being with me was such a drag. She said she knew I couldn't stand her, and she didn't blame me. She got up and said she was gonna bail and crash at Tiffany's until things cooled off. As she was heading out, she asked if I wanted Tiffany to keep bringing the girls by the shop so she could see him, and I said nah. I said Tiffany or Shanice could bring them by the auto shop or to my mama's if they wanted to see her that bad. I said I didn't want them all mixed up when they see her fooling around with Dwayne. Especially if it goes south. Rolling her eyes, she said whatever, and walked out. After all that, I just wanted to chill, grabbing some Jack Daniels. I poured a glass and started sipping to numb the hurt. This whole mess has got my head all twisted up, and if I didn't have my kids, I don't know where I'd be at. I've gotten some messages in my inbox with fellas telling me they've been through the same thing. Some worked it out. Some didn't. I don't know what's gonna happen with me, but I know I can't be with Kayla no more. This is it for me. And even though I saw a bunch of red flags, I never thought my marriage would end up like this. But at least I got my proof on that recorder, 'cause if it wasn't for y'all, I wouldn't know what to do next. I know we're gonna have to file and separate and go for divorce. Hopefully Kayla don't make it messier than it's gotta be. If y'all got any more tips for me dealing with this, I'd really appreciate it. But for now, I'm hanging in there, just trying to get my head right and make sure our girls are all right. I'll keep y'all posted if something else goes down. But I think this might be my last one. Thanks again. Everybody, this was rough. She couldn't date Dwayne at the time because he was already dating Jasmine and we were still together. And I asked her what Jasmine would think about her wanting to be with Dwayne. She said they were having a casual relationship at the time, and Jasmine wouldn't have cared. I said that was true, but Jasmine would think Kayla was a shitty friend and she would be right. Kayla said she didn't want to argue, that she wanted to end it properly, and she left with Tiffany, who was still sitting in her car, and drove away. As much as I hated agreeing with Kayla, she was right. I wouldn't want to be with her knowing she'd rather be with another dude. She's just crazy. But I didn't want her to find out the hard way. Living in a crib by myself was even harder after that. I was definitely pissed off at this embarrassment. I honestly thought that after 9 years of marriage we shouldn't be doing this. When Friday came, I called from work to meet with a lawyer and file for divorce. Someone said I could get alimony from Kayla's salon, and he said if the kids wanted to live with me it was possible. My mom helped me a lot with the kids, but I didn't find much help with the kids. But I found out that my mom spoiled them while they were with her, and also told them that Kayla was leaving the family to go live somewhere else. When my oldest asked me, all I could do was shake my head, thanking my mom, and I had to. After we picked up the kids, we drove by Dwayne's house and I showed the kids that's where their mom wanted to live. I asked the kids if they wanted to stay there with her. They both looked at the dilapidated house and I asked them if they were sure. And my oldest said that for all the money in the world he would not live there. I called Kylie during a break and told her I had already filed for divorce, and she said it was okay, said she wanted to come. I said my mom would pick them up from school because I had things to do. Kayla said she really wants to talk to them, and I said when I get home she can come, and I'll ask my mom to pick them up from school. She should just pick up the kids, and I said, if she wants to see the kids that badly, she should go to my mom and pick them up. But that would not be the smartest move she's ever made. I got angry and said that I always hide behind my mom, and said that if she wants to see the kids, then let her go to my mom. If she wants the kids to go to my mom, if she has the courage, She sighed in frustration and hung up, clearly knowing how petty my mom can be. I haven't heard from Kayla since. I sent her one last message telling her that from now on we would only talk about the divorce and sometimes about our children. Now I think about our girls' lives. Just because Kayla left them doesn't mean they are alone. As long as she's busy getting money from him, she'll be thinking that it's not my problem anymore. And as I said before, I'm not going to lose sleep over what might happen. I really want to thank everyone here for the amazing support. I was scared to go down this path and you all made me braver. I've heard stories of people who caught their old people lying like me. Even worse, some caught them red-handed, which could have ruined me, but I will definitely recover from this shit show. One day Kayla was crazy and it showed. Because of her crazy selfishness, this is my last update and I want to thank you again. Some sluts just belong on the street.